All right, law of signs, guys. This is part one. We're going to talk about something called the ambiguous case next week. That's when you have more than one triangle, but you don't see it. You have to find it. But law of signs is just a series of proportions. And we're going to talk about sides and their corresponding angles. That means sides that go with angles and angles that go with sides. All right, there's a bunch of situations that you guys are going to see. A lot of the times there's just one triangle to solve. Sometimes you work it out and it ends up being no triangle, and sometimes you work it out and it ends up being two triangles. These are just the different kinds of triangles when they give you information they give you. Like sometimes they give you two sides and an angle in the middle. Sometimes they give you two angles and a side. Sometimes they give you two sides and an angle. Sometimes they give you three sides. You'll be able to use the law of sines and the law of cosines to solve any of these kinds of triangles. So what I want to bring to your attention, this is the law of sines. Right here. Sine A over side A. Sine B over side B. Sine C over side C. Do you guys see how the angles stay together and the sides stay together? You can write it switched. You can write it A over sine of A equals B over the sine of B, C over the sine of C. Either way, it doesn't matter, just as long as you keep sides together and angles together. Does everybody see that? Okay, we're going to talk about how to find different things and look at it in your calculator. But if you have a triangle, all right, sometimes they give you a picture, sometimes they don't. If they don't give you a picture, that's okay. You can either draw one or you can just kind of see what you're looking at with the given information. When I talk to you about a side and its corresponding angle, the angle that you are looking at and the side that corresponds with it are directly across from each other. Do you guys see how angles are written with capital letters and sides are written with lowercase? Okay, that's how you determine. Also, if I give you an angle, it'll have what kind of a symbol in it that tells you it's an angle. How do you know when you look at something, you're like, oh, that's an angle? If I said 117, what would be right after the 117? A little circle in the corner. Degrees, yeah. You'll have a degree sign. When we're working on this stuff, guys, we're always going to be in degrees. So if I'm looking at this, you should see that side C corresponds with angle C. Side B corresponds with angle B. So that's what we're going to be talking about. When I say what corresponds with what, the letters stay together. Lowercase means side, uppercase means angle. All right, now something very important that I want you to write down. This is super important, so write this down. Okay? When you are finding side lengths, super duper important. When you're finding side lengths, you use sine, cosine, tangent in your calculator. When you're finding angle measures, so when you're finding angle measures, you use sine -1, cosine -1, tangent -1. These are what of each other? What do you think these are of each other? Inverses. Very good. Very good. These are inverses of each other. These are buttons on the calculator. If you look at your calculator and you see the sine button, just above it, like if you hit shift or second, it'll say sine -1. They're inverses of each other. So just like multiplication, if you had something that was being multiplied, you would divide. If you had something that was being added, you would subtract. If you had something that was squared, you take the square root. If you have the sine of a sine of a number, you take the inverse in order to solve for it. And I'll show you what I mean in just one second. Let's do some examples. All right, we'll talk about this word problem next week. It's nothing difficult. You're just talking about drawing a picture first, but I just kind of want to go over some basics first. All right, so first thing I want to do is I'm looking at this triangle. They want me to find AC. All right, what side are they asking me to find when they say AC? Is it side A, side B, or side C? What are they asking me to find? What did I tell you about angles and their corresponding sides? They're where from each other? They're across from each other. So here's angle B. What's across from? Right here. This is side B. So if you guys had to find the missing piece, you need a side and its corresponding angle. Do we have a side and its corresponding angle? I have a side right here. What does this side correspond with? What angle? What angle does 24 correspond with? A, B, or C? I just circled it. C. Do we know what angle C measure it is? Can we figure it out? How? Add 118 and 22, and what do you get? 140? How many degrees are in one whole triangle? So I'm going to say 180 minus 140, and I get what? 40 degrees. So angle C is 40 degrees. Do you guys now have a side and its corresponding angle? Yes. So you can set up your proportion. You can say sine of 40 over 24. If you want to put 24 over sine of 40, you can do that. Now I'm trying to find B. So what information do I know about B, and then what am I looking for? Am I looking for the angle, or am I looking for the side? I'm looking for the side. So my B is going to go right here because it's lowercase and it's a side. And on top, I'm going to say sine of 22. Does anybody have any questions about how I just set that up? Now, how do we solve proportions? Every proportion you guys have ever seen, how do you solve it? You cross multiply. Perfect. So do that. 24 times the sine of 22 equals B times the sine of 40. Now, guys, the sine of 40 is just a number. That's like saying 2B. If I wanted to get B by itself, what would I do? Divide by the sine of 40. It's just a gross decimal, so just leave it as sine of 40 and let your calculator do this work. So I have B equals, in your calculator, hit 24. So you're going to hit 24 times the sine of 22, enter, divided by sine 40. What do you guys get? Okay, you got 13, like 0.99. Okay, perfect, good. We found a side length. That's why we used the normal trig functions in our calculator. Let's look at the next one. All right, it says find AB. Well, what would we label AB? Is that side A, side B, or side C? It's side C because it's across from what? Angle C. Good job. Very good job. So do I already have a side and its corresponding angle? I do. So I don't even have to solve for A. It doesn't matter what A is. It has nothing to do with our problem. So I would set this up and I'd say the sine of 40 over 7 equals what over what?
What's the sine of 44?
Oh, yep, it is 44. Don't know why I wrote that. Thank you. Sine of 44 over what? What over what? Perfect. Sine 53 over what? Little c. Good. So how do we solve? How do you solve proportions? Cross multiply. So 7 times the sine of 53 equals c times the sine of 44. How do I get c all by itself? Divide by the sine of 44. Correct. Felicity, no problem. I just got your chat, babe. So in your calculators, guys, do 7 times the sine of 53. So 7 sine 53 divided by sine 44. What do you get? $8.04?
Yeah.
So we'll say 05?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Good. You guys remember this from before? No? If not, that's okay. All right, I want to find BC. So So look what you're trying to find. I'm trying to find BC. What letter side am I trying to find? Good. Does this look like a right triangle? Kinda, right? But we can't, it's not, right? Because we got to make sure. So how do I find, I need a side and its corresponding angle. Do I have that information already? No. But can I figure out what angle B is? Yep. 58 plus 93. What does that give me? 151. Okay. And then I take 180 minus 151 and I get what? This is 21 degrees. Do I now have a side? Oh, it's 29. Do I now have a side and its corresponding angle? So let's set this up. How would I set it up? Sine 29 over, perfect, equals sine 93 over little a, because that's what we're looking for, a side. So I cross multiply like we've done 100 times already today. 16 sine 93 equals a times the sine of 29. How do I get a all by itself? Divide by the sine of 29. Good. So a equals, in our calculators, guys, 16 times the sine of 93 divided by sine 29. What do you guys get? $32.9596. Agreed? Okay. All right, great. All right, so we just took those three problems and we found side lengths. So now I look at these next ones, all right? We're going to do 3 examples and then we're done. I don't have a picture here, but I have enough information to solve without the picture, because what do I need in order to set up my first proportion? We need an angle and it's what? Corresponding side. Do I have that? Yes, so let's just go ahead and set up our proportion. I have the sine of 73 over 5 equals what? Sine of capital A. Good. How do I know it's a capital A? How do I know I'm finding an angle? Because they gave me what? A side. So this one's a little different. We're not finding sides now. We're finding angles. Again, same thing. Let's cross multiply. So I have 5 times the sine of A equals 7 times the sine of 73. How do I get the sine of A all by itself? Divide by 5. So here, guys, I'm left with sine A equals 7 times the sine 73 divided by 5. Now, in your calculator, if you did 7 sine 73 divided by 5, you get 1.33. Okay, we're going to do that in a second. 1.33. Does that make sense that one of the angles is 73 degrees and the other one is 1.3? Yes or no? That should set off a little bell and whistle, be like, well, that proportion's kind of off. But I want A all by itself. Is A completely alone? No. When I told you at the beginning, when we're looking for an angle, what do we use on our calculator if we're looking for an angle? The inverse. So in your calculator, look, if I do the inverse of this side, then I do the inverse of this side. So when we're looking for an angle, you have to do the inverse. So in my calculator, this value was 1.3388. So do sine -1. You got to hit second. And what do you get when you plug that in? You should be getting an error. When you get an error message, it's funny to watch you guys do it because you're like, huh? Are you doing it again? Huh? When you get an error, that is an answer. That's telling you that no triangle can be formed. There are 3 different kinds of answers you can get with using the law of sines. 80% of the time, there's 1 triangle. Then the other times, it's either no triangle or there's 2. We'll talk about how to find when there's 2. We'll talk about that on Monday. But if you work everything out in your calculator and it says error, that's okay. That just means, oh, wait, this whatever the information they give us does not form a triangle, and that's okay. All right, let's do the next 2, and then we're done. What did they give us? What can I set up as my proportion based upon what they gave us? Sine of 117 over what? 38. Perfect. Do you see how they gave us an angle and its corresponding side? All right. Equals what over what? Sine of capital A over 16. Perfect. So this time, before I even do anything, I know I'm going to have to do what at the end of my calculator? The inverse, the sine -1. Perfect. So I have 38 sine A equals 16 times the sine of 117. If I get sine A by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by 38. So I get the sine of A equals, in my calculator, I'm going to put 16 times the sine of 117 and then divide that by 38. What'd y'all get? Okay, so 0.3751. Now think about it. Before you even were going to say, okay, that's my answer. Does that make sense that one of the angles was 117 degrees and the other one is 0.375? That should be a reminder that you're like, wait a second, I must have did something wrong or I have another step. I have to get A by itself, so I'm going to do the inverse. If I take the inverse of one side, then I take the inverse of the other. So I have A equals, in your calculators, just hit second sign and then put 0.3751. What'd y'all get? 22.03 degrees? All right, good. That makes a little more sense. Is this crazy hard? No. All right, what's my first proportion I'm going to set up, given the information that they gave me? Sine of 145 over 33, right? Equals what over 7? Sine of capital B. We're trying to find now angle B, okay? Guys, same thing. We're going to cross multiply. So 33 times the sine of B equals 7 times the sine of 145. I need to get sine B all by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by 33. And I get that the sine of B equals, let's do that in our calculator, 7 times the sine of 145 divided by 33. I got 0.1217. .1217. Now, again, use your brains a little bit. 145 degrees is one of the angles. Is the other one 0.1217? Absolutely not. So that means, I have to do my inverse. So I'm going to say sine -1 on this side and sine -1 on this side. So this becomes B equals, this angle is going to be small. That's okay. But it's not going to be that small. So it's what? 6.99 degrees. That's the first part of law of sines. Monday, we're going to talk about something where it's called the ambiguous case, meaning when you work this out, not given a picture, there's actually two triangles that can be formed. So just remember, your three options are, it's either no triangle, that's when you get an error in your calculator, one triangle, or two triangles, which we'll work on Monday. Sound good?